Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller mystery films from 2024, titled The Cellar Door. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens with a married couple, Sarah and John, who are expecting a baby, and are busy decorating the nursery. They don't know the baby's gender yet, and while Sarah is fine with the surprise, John is struggling to contain his curiosity. The next day, we see Sarah at work as a math lecturer at a university. On the other hand, John works as an architect, and one of his co-workers is his ex-girlfriend, Alyssa. She asks if she can accompany him to a new house showing today, but this makes John uncomfortable, so he politely declines. Later, while Sarah is at home playing the piano, she suddenly experiences immense pain in her abdomen. She immediately calls her husband, but he doesn't answer because he's busy showing a house to potential customers. Sometime later, he is shocked to see several missed calls and texts from Sarah. John immediately rushes to the hospital, where he receives the devastating news that Sarah has suffered a miscarriage. In the following days, the distraught couple struggles to move on from the tragedy. Hence, Sarah informs John that she can't live in this house anymore, and he agrees with her. In the next scene, we see the couple house hunting around town for their next move. But they have difficulty finding anything suitable, because most of the properties are either too expensive or complete teardowns. Sarah becomes frustrated, so the realtor suggests they meet with one of her acquaintances, who can get them the house of their dreams. She explains that he has been in town for a long time, knows everyone, and is familiar with every single property. The next day, the couple arrives at a beautiful mansion in the middle of the woods. They meet a man named Emmett Claymore, who warmly greets them. The couple heads inside, and is immediately impressed by the luxurious interior. Emmett reveals that the house was built in 1918, and after buying it, he spent nearly a decade restoring it. He claims to be an expert at matching people with the right home, but he needs to know the buyers first. For that reason, he invites them to stay for dinner, which the couple eagerly accepts. The three then begin drinking, and Emmett wonders why such a young couple wants to leave the city and move to a remote place. Sarah responds that they are leaving one painful story behind, and want to write a new one. While exploring the house, the couple finds various weapons in a showcase. Emmett reveals that while renovating, he discovered some antiques and weapons hidden in the walls and floors. He says that old houses are like people, and they all have their dark secrets. After dinner, Emmett jokingly asks if this house were theirs, would they be happy? But Sarah responds it's not the house that makes them happy, it's home. Soon after, Emmett asks them to stay overnight in the guest room. The couple agrees without hesitation since John is drunk and shouldn't drive. Emmett then assures them that he has found the ideal house for them, which they will discuss in the morning. The next morning, when the couple wakes up, they're shocked to notice that Emmett is nowhere to be found. And their attention is suddenly drawn to a note left on the dining table. In the letter, Emmett surprisingly reveals that he wishes to leave the mansion to them as a start for their new life. He won't charge anything, but he has one simple condition, which is never to open the cellar door. He warns that if they break this rule, the house will immediately go back to him. Emmett considers it a small price to pay for the happiness they seek. Upon reading this, a skeptical John thinks the whole thing is too good to be true. But Sarah doesn't care, as she's ecstatic to have such a huge mansion for nothing. Soon, they are approached by the realtor, who urges them to sign the documents and move in immediately. Afterward, Sarah and John talk privately, during which he reveals how creeped out he feels by the situation. But Sarah reminds him that they spent all of their money on IVF, and if they stay here, they will be able to heal, and try for a baby again. After a lot of convincing, John reluctantly gives in. In the next scene, we see the couple moving into their large new home, and they finally seem to be happy after a long time. Sarah plays the piano again, something she hadn't done since her miscarriage. One evening, they host a housewarming party with all of their close friends in attendance. Surprisingly, Alyssa also shows up with her new date, which makes John nervous, but Sarah, who doesn't know about their past, warmly greets her. Later, John approaches Alyssa privately, and asks what she's doing here. She says she heard about what happened to his baby and was worried for him. Alyssa also tries to seduce him, saying she's here for whatever he needs, but John makes it clear that he's not interested and asks her to leave him alone. Just then, John's boss arrives and urgently summons him. Outside, John notices that the crowd is staring at a deranged man in the distance. He is carrying a can of gasoline, so John approaches to ask what's the matter. Rather creepily, the man advises John to burn down the entire place before it destroys them. He leaves without explaining further, leaving John flabbergasted. The next morning, when John arrives at work, he shockingly learns that Alyssa has filed harassment charges against him. He is suspended for now, but his boss assures him that it's just temporary until they investigate the matter. When John returns home, Sarah tells him she has decided to go back to work, as she's finally feeling better. She inquires about his day, but John lies, claiming that it was good. He then goes outside to clear his mind, but his attention is suddenly drawn to the cellar door. In the following days, Sarah leaves for work, while John goes on multiple runs throughout the day to calm his mind. His boss urges him to tell Sarah the truth since it's been 2 weeks, but John doesn't want to upset her, as she has been so happy for the first time in so long. He believes he can talk to Alyssa and convince her to change her mind, but his boss warns him that this might only put him in more trouble. After the call, John's attention is once again shifted toward the cellar door, and he becomes determined to see what's inside. The ungrateful, idiot man just can't obey the simple rule, so he grabs a tool and desperately attempts to open the door, but is unsuccessful. In the evening, John suggests to Sarah that they should check the cellar, and Emmett won't even know about it. But she refuses, reminding him that this is the only condition they agreed on, and she doesn't want to risk losing their home. The next day, John leaves a voicemail for Alyssa, saying they need to talk. He then notices a door beneath the stairs and comes up with an idea. John visits the city planning office, and gets a blueprint of the mansion they're living in. He learns that the previous owner, Paul McManus, had requested a copy, but never followed up afterward. This leaves John confused, as he thought the owner was Emmett Claymore. The employee then reveals that Emmett used to live there 25 years ago, and seemed happily married. However, something strange happened one day when his wife took their daughter, and ran off in the middle of the night. Upon returning home, John studies the blueprint and discovers that the door under the stairs leads to the cellar. He thus opens the door and heads inside, where he finds some floorboards. John removes a few planks with some tools, before entering a crawlspace. As he explores further, he finally discovers a barred-up door leading to the cellar. John can't remove the bars, so he drills a hole through the door to see what's on the other side. But before he can finish, he hears Sarah's car arriving outside. John quickly rushes upstairs and greets his wife, who doesn't suspect anything. Later that night, he receives a call from Alyssa, who asks what he wants. John requests that he just wants to talk and requests to meet once, so Alyssa invites him to meet her at their favorite location tomorrow. The next day, the two meet at a parking lot, and John demands to know why she's making up lies about him. In a shocking twist, it is revealed that they had been intimate numerous times behind Sarah's back. Alyssa tries to convince him to come back, saying they belong together. But John makes it clear that he's never going to leave Sarah for her. When Alyssa threatens to reveal everything to Sarah, John ultimately claims he'll kill her if she comes anywhere near his wife. The following day, John goes out for a run, while Sarah is busy painting the nursery to manifest a baby. But she suddenly throws up, prompting her to take a pregnancy test. The test results are positive, which makes her delighted. However, things take an unexpected turn when she discovers blueprints hidden beneath the bed. Sarah studies the blueprints, and then heads to the door under the stairs to see where it leads. Moments later, Alyssa is seen arriving at the house. Sarah, on the other hand, reaches the barricaded cellar door that her husband had tried to drill, but her flashlight's battery dies, so she goes upstairs to get a new one. Alyssa enters the house at this point, and calls out to Sarah, but the latter doesn't hear her and returns downstairs. Alyssa then wanders around the house, and sees several family pictures of the couple, which upsets her. Meanwhile, Sarah notices the drill hole in the wooden cellar door. She is annoyed, and realizes what her husband has been up to. Elsewhere, Alyssa discovers the positive pregnancy test kit, which further devastates her. When Sarah finally returns upstairs, she doesn't find Alyssa anywhere but notices the front door is open. Meanwhile, John is talking to his boss in his car, when he notices Alyssa's vehicle driving away from the house. He gets scared that she may have talked to Sarah, and starts chasing her at full speed. The scene then cuts to night. John finally returns home, where Sarah informs him that she's pregnant. This makes him very happy, but Sarah reveals that she's disappointed in him for trying to enter the cellar behind her back. John apologizes, promises it won't happen again, and closes the crawlspace entrance with planks and nails the door shut. The next morning, John receives a call from work, where the HR informs him that he has been cleared of all the allegations and can come back. This news makes him ecstatic, and he feels like his life is finally coming back together. In the next scene, John returns to his office for the first time in weeks. Boss mentions that Alyssa's infatuation with John was no secret, and no one believed her sob story. He also mentions that Alyssa has taken some time off work, claiming she's busy with self-care. The HR department tried reaching out to her, but she's been dodging their calls. That night, John and Sarah are decorating the nursery when he notices a hole in the wall. When he digs into it, he finds a bullet, which immediately freaks him out. John suggests calling the cops, but Sarah refuses, believing there might be a rational explanation for it. John then reveals that he heard Emmett's wife and child left him 25 years ago. He speculates that Emmett may have murdered them, and hid their bodies in the cellar. However, Sarah disagrees and emphasizes that she doesn't want to ruin their perfect life, especially with a baby on the way. She begs him to drop the matter, and in the end, John has no choice but to oblige. The scene then cuts to a few days later, where some cops arrive at John's workplace for an investigation. It turns out they have found Alyssa's abandoned car, and she has been reported as missing. Elsewhere, we see Sarah in a bar hanging out with one of the neighbors. The latter reveals that the mansion had many families over the years, but all of them just left without any explanation. She expresses how happy she is to have them as neighbors, especially meeting John during his runs in the afternoons. This surprises Sarah, as her husband is supposed to be at work during that time. Her attention is suddenly drawn to the television, where she sees the news about Alyssa's disappearance. Later, while John is in the shower, Sarah goes through his email, and is shocked to learn about the sexual harassment complaint filed by Alyssa. She then checks his phone and discovers a history of phone calls between the two. Meanwhile, John continues to inspect the bullet. And then, when he compares it to Emmett's ammunition collection, he discovers that they're the same. The next morning, he again suggests the idea of going to the cellar, but Sarah refuses as they'll lose the house. This leads to an argument, but it's abruptly cut short when someone rings the doorbell. It turns out to be two detectives who are investigating Alyssa's disappearance. They speak with John in private, and he honestly tells them about the allegations, and how they met in the parking lot. He doesn't reveal the affair, but admits that they were together before he met Sarah. In response, the detectives reveal that Alyssa's phone pinged near their home the day she disappeared. John denies any knowledge of this, so the cops ask where he was that day, and if anyone can confirm his location. This makes John nervous, so Sarah, who had been listening to everything, appears. She claims that her husband was with her the whole time, so he couldn't have been involved. The cops are convinced upon hearing this, so they leave the house for now. Afterward, Sarah confronts John, and reveals that she knows about his affair with Alyssa. She feels deeply betrayed, but says that she only covered for him because she doesn't want their baby to grow up with a dad in prison. John tries to convince her that he didn't kill Alyssa, but Sarah isn't sure whether she can trust him anymore. Later that night, John can't sleep, and keeps thinking about the mystery of the cellar. He believes the root of all his problems lies in there, and is determined to uncover the truth. The next day, John tracks down the address of the previous owner, Paul McManus, and visits him. Surprisingly, Paul is revealed to be the same deranged man who showed up at the housewarming party. He turns out to be an alcoholic who is going through a messy divorce. Paul admits that when his family first moved into the house, everything seemed perfect, but it soon began to fall apart. John questions Paul about the cellar, and the latter cryptically explains that it brings out the worst in them. Here, Paul reveals that not opening the cellar is his biggest regret, and he advises John that his only option is to break the contract and open the cellar door to see what's inside. Upon returning home, John tells Sarah that he can't contain himself anymore, and insists they should open the cellar door and leave the house. She expectedly refuses, as she doesn't want to risk her happiness and perfect life. But John grabs a crowbar and proceeds to open the cellar door anyway. Sarah desperately tries to stop him, but he remains determined and ignores her. And then this happens. When John wakes up inside the house later, Sarah apologizes, saying she couldn't let him open the door. All of a sudden, she shows him Alyssa's cell phone, which leaves him in utter shock. The scene then cuts to a flashback when Alyssa came over to the house. Sarah, who was downstairs, heard a noise and assumed there was an intruder. She thus went upstairs with a gun, and warned Alyssa to get out of the house. But instead, Alyssa began blabbering about how she didn't deserve this life. This pushed Sarah off the edge.
You don't deserve this.
Alyssa was still alive that time, so for a brief moment, Sarah considered calling the cops. But the movie takes a dark turn when she didn't want to risk losing her perfect life, so she strangled Alyssa until she died. After that, Sarah wrapped the dead body in drop sheets and dragged her downstairs. She threw the body in the crawl space that led to the cellar. We also learned that the person John had been chasing in the car was actually Sarah, whom he soon lost sight of. After leaving the car in an isolated area, Sarah uploaded some pictures from Alyssa's phone and sent an email to work, asking for some time off. John is shocked to hear all of this, and assures his wife that he will find her a good lawyer. But Sarah points a gun toward him, saying that if he tells the truth, he will end up in jail, because all the evidence points to him as the murderer. She reminds him that it was he who nailed shut the crawl space where Alyssa is buried. Sarah reveals how she will testify that it was John who lured Alyssa to the house and murdered her. The wife only found out when the police arrived, and she discovered Alyssa's phone among John's belongings. When Sarah tried to confront him about it, he attacked her, prompting her to shoot him in self-defense. Sarah then gives John a second option. He can remain silent and live the perfect life with their baby. When John questions her about Alyssa, Sarah reveals she will be forgotten as a tragic disappearance. She asks what his decision is going to be, but John just stays silent. The scene then cuts to a few months later, where we see Sarah having a baby shower party. John is also there, meaning he has decided to accept his fate and remain with his murderous wife. During the ceremony, the couple receives a gift from Emmett, who congratulates the couple on their new chapter of life. Along with the letter, he has also given them the key to the cellar door. Emmett says it's up to them whether or not to use it, but he believes they already know what is inside. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.